The warm glow of the late summer sun, the crisp morning breeze. All the planning and anticipation is over. The 1998 Western Minnesota Steam Threshers reunion is here. The 1998 show featured the engineering of International Harvester, a rich, interesting collection of everything from tractors, stationary engines, lawn equipment, trucks, refrigerators, air conditioners, and more. One of the first conglomerates in American agriculture, International had the reputation for always trying something new. To appreciate the rich history of International Harvester, you have to go back to the very beginning. Farming, as our ancestors knew it, was changed forever by Cyrus McCormick and the reaper. To some, the thought of harvesting grain with a machine seemed strange, and to others, it seemed lazy. But in 1831, McCormick tested his invention and proved it could harvest 10 acres a day, compared with just 3 by a good Simon and the necessary binders and shockers. Farmers soon came to appreciate the amount of work they could accomplish with this new equipment. And McCormick's work didn't stop there. He also patented a cast iron moldboard plow that kept his family business afloat through early years. Now, nearly 150 years later, gently skating through a field of golden grain, one of Cyrus McCormick's reapers rhythmically gathers up its crop. This marvel of the past gives us a glimpse at how far we've come and the simple wisdom of days gone by. This reaper is one of the oldest working pieces of farming history. It's a treasure the organizers of the Western Minnesota Steam Threshers reunion are proud to display. And for International Harvester lovers, it marks the first step in the journey to modern farming and to the machines they love so much. Because for many, these pieces just aren't made of metal, they're built out of memories.
Just the way, the quality that was built into them, especially the old stuff. I mean, it was, everybody's got to have something that trips their trigger. This is it.
It's just that you like to work on old equipment. I don't care what it is. So it's old. That's simple enough. So you get dirty and greasy, and I don't mind it.
It was August 12, 1902, when International Harvester was born. The merger of McCormick and Deering turned old rivals into allies overnight.
Well, in 1902, of course, there was 5 companies that went together to form International Harvester, and then as it went on the next few years, they got Canton Plow and Weber Wagon, and they just kept, swallowing up, I guess you'd say, companies or going together with companies. But yes, they've become real huge by doing it.
The Big Five were Milwaukee, Deering, McCormick, Plano, and Champion.
McCormick and Deering are probably the 2 most prominent names that people can relate to, and it's Cyrus McCormick, or the descendants of Cyrus McCormick and William Deering. And then there were other companies like Osborne and Champion, and numerous other companies that were bought by IH.
Some farmers say it was a good thing for many of those companies to merge and become part of International Harvester because many may have fallen by the wayside or gone bankrupt trying to compete with this new way of doing business.
They were the first corporate conglomerate or whatever. If they didn't like their competition or they liked the idea the competition had, they went and bought them out. That's how they got to be so big in such a hurry. And because of that, they were tied up in court for years, antitrust laws, this sort of thing. You won't find internationals in the state of Texas. They were banned from dealing or selling in the state of Texas until into the 30s before they finally got it settled in court. Well, think of the market that the state of Texas alone was that they missed out on, you know. They were some of the first companies to ship overseas, to do any overseas marketing at all. They were the first one to get in their fingers in that. They tried like Henry Ford. They bought, they had their own wood factories. You know, they tried to get everything under their thumb so they could control everything. They didn't have to worry about any strikes or anything like that, and they didn't want somebody else putting the screws to them, so they just bought all the companies up.
For International Harvester, tractor experiments began in 1905, and the first International tractors appeared on the market in 1906. The early tractors used Morton truck chassis and the International famous gasoline engine. The first all-International tractors appeared in 1908. Titan and Mogul trademarks became famous around the world, and in 1924 they made history again with the introduction of the Farmall row crop tractor. Since then, International Harvester has been an industry leader in tractors. The organizers of the Western Minnesota Steam Threshers reunion were thrilled to have one of the original 1908 International tractors on display at this year's show. The tractor is owned by Vernon Iverson.
Well, the main thing different on this tractor is completely physical, friction drive, both forwards and backwards. And that it made it to begin with, it was pulled around with a team of horses, and the steer mainly got to, there wasn't even called a tractor. It was strictly for belt work.
We have the 1908 tractor, friction drive tractor, the first model built by IH. We go on up the line. The first 4 or 5 years, we have them all here. And a lot of these tractors, people will never see again. It's been a lot of work to get them here and a lot of trucking, but we wanted them here and we've got them.
Collectors say they love these old tractors because of the memories they hold. International was such a pervasive company with so many dealerships around the country that it was hard to find a farmer who didn't have an International machine or know someone who did. The engineering that went into these machines is what made them special. A simple internal combustion engine that farmers could easily repair and keep running for decades.
They are so simple that with the magneto sparks and the igniter's not shorted out, there's no reason for them not to run.
This 15 horsepower Mogul gas engine is the first one off the line. The serial number 501 is stamped on the side. It's the first one built in 1914.
It was built for whenever they need a little bigger belt horsepower. Now they built a lot of small engines, but this was for something like feed mills. I saw an advertising brochure where they had one of them pictured built to a rock crusher. Now this engine was originally bought by Adolph Mulvey near West Cliff, Colorado. And according to information I have been provided, he used it to pull a small thrashing machine and a cordwood saw. I would like to have seen the saw rig because that drive pulley on there is 36 inches. And the normal wood saw pulley is real small.
Steve and Sylvia Bauer brought their Mogul 45 built in 1912.
The 3060, they increased the horsepower on a 3060. They made a mechanical intake valve, and this is regular aspirated intake valve on this engine. There's a difference on this engine. Some of the difference is the way the cooling has gone through and the different towers in the front and stuff like that. The originality of this engine being original shape rather than painted up and restored.
Bill Folkers found his treasure in North Dakota.
It's a 1920. The International, of course, as you can see. International kerosene tractor. And this thing's got 7 carburetors on it. I only use 4, but there's 7 on it. He was kind of wondering. He says, well, how come? He said, how come that there isn't many of these left? Because it was built in the same era that the 1020s were. Nobody knows. They're all scrapped, I think.
Come in here and start on the second floor unless you don't like that.
A few of them were left, and that's a good thing. I have to get you the choker or one of these.
A 1910 Type B International tractor. It's gear drive forward and reverse with a hit and miss governor. This was the next step into that with a gear forward and gear reverse with two speeds forward.
John Tessie's collection includes a B International as well as 5 other rare and valuable tractors on display here at Rolog. John owns the Mogul Junior, the 45 Titan, the 1835, which is thought to be one of a kind, the 25, and the 1530 International Titan. His collection is one of the most valuable international collections in the country. And the farmers that use these machines will tell you they're good performers. They're reliable and tough.
They were real workhorses. They were a long life tractors. All the tractors from that were long life. There today, the H's and M's basically, there's more of them in use than any other make. They're just all over the country. And talking to people here, well, I wish I'd have brought my tractor. Well, they didn't. Now they're sorry they didn't when they see how many are here. All the models, it's just, the country's just full of them, really.
For some, the older the machine, the better.
Oh, the machining and the casting and this sort of thing is just far superior to the vast majority of the engines that come along later. They didn't build a good engine after 1920. The old stuff is where it was, the infancy. I think they knew more then. After 1920, they started making them cheap. Before that, price didn't matter so much. They were after quality.
And it's the unique and rare pieces that make this show so special. For the organizers, it meant a lot that so many collectors responded by bringing their valuable treasures to Rolog.
Our goal when we started was not so much to have 1,000 tractors. We wanted to have 300 tractors and every one of them different, or gas engines, all the different ones. We wanted to display the full line of International Harvester, not picking out any certain red tractors, gray tractors, gas engines, or anything. We went for the whole spectrum of International Harvester, and I think we got it. In 39, when they came with the H&M with a new sleeker styling, more of a styled tractor, it just kind of, it gave everybody a whole outlook, the way the future was going. They took off. They were very popular. As the millionth farmall that International sold was an M in about, I think it was 41. Okay, so that's just farmall tractors before they were standard wheel tractors. That was their way of the future. The tractor was so popular, the H's and the M's, they made them from 39 to 54. Quite a span with the same tractor. Made a few upgrades here and there, but everybody really accepted that tractor. It really took off. That was a big boost for International Harvester. out of the biggest problem out of, they made a 500,000 H's and a 500,000 M's. Most of them are still working. That's why they couldn't come to the show. Another feature when they came with the H's and M's, or in that era, was the fact that they had hydraulics now built into your tractor. Yeah, and with hydraulics came a lot of different implements, mounted implements, corn cultivators, stuff like that. That was so much easier to run than a hand lift, or which they still had some of that also, depending on what the farmer wanted. But the invention of hydraulics really kicked that tractor off. It really made them a very useful tractor for many jobs around the farm. That's why they were called the farm haul. Through in 55 or 54 when they actually discontinued the Super MTAs and started with the next 400 and 450 series, stuff like that. Every couple of years they were changing. They were not so much changing the part of the tractor, just the outward exterior appearance of it. Engines and drive lines basically were the same up until they ran into their problems with the 560 tractor. They kept the back end the same, and they started pumping more horsepower to them, and soon realized that wasn't their way to go. In the 806 tractor, which was next to the M, probably the most popular international tractor made, that was totally redesigned and totally new tractor. The 806 and the 706. They gave International a shot in the arm, just as the M did back in 40. The 5 millionth farm haul built was in 74, I believe, and that was a 1066. So from their millionth farm haul in 1940 to 1974, they made a lot of farm haul tractors. Every small town, every town had a dealer, of some sort, be it whether it was a competition or whether it was harvester. A lot of the small towns had one of every dealer, and they were, back then, if you drove 20 miles to go get parts, that was a big trip. Nowadays you go 100 and it's nothing. Anything that was you could use on your farm, International Harvester had it. All the ways from like I say, a tractor, they had a tillage line, they had the harvesting line, swathers, combines, and you could even haul it to the elevator in a International truck, which they were very popular. They had, like I said, air conditioners, fridges, freezers, cream separators, milk coolers, milking machines. They were a very full line farm equipment.
As far as tracks we had from the 1908 all the way up through the quad track that was built just 2 days prior to bringing it out to the show. So we had 90 some years of experience or technology out at the grounds. The same way in the trucks, we had the 1907 to a brand new Navistar over the road truck. So it showed from being just a basic buggy with a motor to a over the road $100,000 piece of equipment driving down the road. The actual lawn and garden line started in 1961, but before that they had the farm haul cub was started in 45. That was a little tractor, so to speak. In the later years when they did, before they started the actual lawn and garden line, they used the cubs and the A's and the B's for mowing the yards. And in 61 they introduced the Cub Cadet line by International, and in 63 I think then it went to be an International Cub Cadet is how it was. They're still being built today under a different, still Cub Cadet, but it's by MTD and not International Harvester. And they made push mowers, they made garden tractors. I don't know, they made them up to 16, 20 horse, and then they only made the Cub Lowboys. They were a 4-cylinder. The other ones were just 2-cylinder or single cylinder. But they went from a 38-inch deck probably to a 60 or 72-inch deck. They made Nipco heaters, power washers, so it's a whole line of lawn and garden and shop. They made shop tools, wrenches, all kinds of things.
International had the reputation of being a very innovative company, building many experimental pieces. One of their experimental tractors is housed in the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. Organizers were able to convince museum officials to bring it to Rolog. Larry Jones, director of the museum's agriculture display, has worked with the folks at the Western Minnesota Steam Threshers reunion for the past few years. He says the IH turbine tractor was an important experimental piece. It was built as an alternate source of power for farm equipment.
We already had these jet engines when this tractor was built. They were all already jet-powered airplanes and helicopters. And this engine here, there was a gentleman here the other day who was comparing it to an APU on an airplane or a helicopter. An APU is an auxiliary power unit. If you've ever been in the tail end of a plane right when they're boarding and you'll hear this woo, well, that is an engine. That's an APU that's starting up, which supplies electricity to the plane and hydraulics and everything. They don't really get that power from the main engine.
It's pieces like this one that IH lovers are impressed by.
They were trying to be a leader in everything that they were doing, as far as the crawler tractors, the wheel tractors, the farm tractors. Sometimes they learned their mistakes and corrected them. They were always looking for new ideas, and that's the idea where the turbine tractor came from. Looking to develop the hydrostatic drive, they were always looking forward to the next step.
And although it may have seemed like a good concept, it's pretty apparent that a turbine tractor was not real practical for use on the farm.
I think it would have been virtually impossible to have filtered the intake air well enough on a farm tractor out in the field in dusty conditions. And also it was a different type of technology that you were trying to sell the farmer. The repair and support facilities would have taken total retraining for mechanics, because turbine or jet power, that's what these were jet engines, it's a totally different technology from internal combustion piston engines, be it gasoline or diesel. So I think that was not practical.
But for many, it's a landmark tractor like the Comfort Cab.
You could look at it and tell it ain't never going to work. But they tried it. They did a lot of that. That's where they come up with some of their good ideas too, was by trying it, trial and error. And
Everybody wants to just talk about tractors and stuff like that, but there's more to the company than that.
International made lots more than tractors, and trucks was a big part of it. As a matter of fact, trucks is the only part of International Harvester that's left. So we got to remember that trucks were important. They started making trucks with the little auto buggy in 1907, and they made them continuous after that. They were called corn binders by most people all through the 50s and 60s, I know.
It's true that trucks were an early addition to the International Harvester line. It started with the auto buggy in 1907. Hellman Weiss from Wishick, North Dakota, restored this auto buggy. He bought the buggy sight unseen and was in for a shock when he spotted his purchase.
I always wanted one, and I finally bought one, and the guy sold it to me for $1,100 without seeing it. And when I got there, I just had pictures of what you saw here, just a bunch of junk. And he was a lawyer, so I knew there was nothing I could do about it. So it's all right, someday I'll catch him.
It took many months and thousands of dollars to gather all the parts to rebuild the truck.
The fenders I got out of Coffeyville, Kansas, and the steering wheel I got out of Albert Lee, Minnesota. And a lot of stuff I got out of Chicago from Whitney, and the back wheels I sent to Goshen, Indiana, to have new rubber put on. That cost me $1,100. So by the time you're done, you spend a lot of money on your hobby.
got down here in 1936 half-ton pickup that I just got about 6 weeks ago or so. And then I've got a 1950 pickup that I've had since 1965. Dad bought it brand new, so that's been the family since new. And when I quit farming, that's the one I started with. I kind of caught the fever fixing it up. And then I've got a 1966 900, which is a little 6-foot box pickup with a 4-cylinder Scout engine in it. Pretty rare pickup. So. And then I've got a 75 3/4 or a half-ton 4-wheel drive that's one of the last ones made. So.
For these truck collectors, it's the ruggedness of these machines that impresses them.
Sturdy, real sturdy. I know I had a couple Chevrolet pickups and I just figured they were cars with boxes on them, they weren't trucks. Couldn't haul nothing, couldn't pull nothing.
But when you consider how old this truck is, sometimes it's a wonder it runs at all.
Well, I had a lot of trouble last week. First, the motor didn't run, and when I had that going, then the transmission went out. Then I had to take the transmission out and fix that, and after I had that fixed, and the motor quit again. It's a lot of fun.
When Deering merged to form International Harvester, they were already selling gas stationary engines. Mitch found this 1906 3-horsepower engine and restored it to its original condition.
Probably the nicest piece of my collection of 2530 engines. It's a nice one. And 1906 is getting pretty old, you know. And it was run every year since the day it was made. It's never been stuck or nothing like that. The old guy that owned it had a rule that was nobody ate dinner on the 4th of July until this engine was running. And he kept it up all these years and this sort of thing. So it's been run every year. The first Internationals were back in the 1890s, 94, 95 was the first ones. They were more or less a copy of the Charter Engine Company, which was earlier than that yet by a couple of years. But the vertical famous like this, they started in 1905, was the first one. Which was a different engine than this. They changed them every year, or every other engine for a while, till they thought they got her down pat. And they even changed this one 2 years after they changed it, put a water pump on it. This has got a different cooling system on it than any of the other ones. This part of the wood is original, and it just had a round tank that held probably 4 or 5 gallons. Well, it just wasn't big enough to do the job. So this guy put this old radiator on there, just the way I got it. It was just like that. So I figured it was good enough for him, it's good enough for me. It was, when I got it, it was dripping with grease, oil. You couldn't even almost tell there wasn't an engine there. Every time he started it, he must have taken an oil can and just dumped it over the top of it, you know. But that's why it's in the condition it's in, too. Oil's everything in this old stuff.
Darrell Day and his father worked to put the pieces together for an interesting exhibit on the grounds of the Western Minnesota Steam Threshers reunion. The farm powerhouse was an idea that never really took off for International Harvester, but nonetheless, it's an interesting concept.
Reproduction out of an ad that International had about 1910. It's called a farm powerhouse. And it's an exhibit where they run an engine with a line shaft and did several jobs at once. Shelling corn, grinding feed, pumping water, separating milk. And the idea was your engine was heavy to move. You could bring the job to the engine easier, and also the engine was undercover. The engine is about a 1910 kerosene burning engine. It's a throttle governor, meaning it hits every other revolution, 4 cycle. He also built the same engine in hit and miss, where it would fire, and then as the RPMs dropped, it would fire again. This is a lot smoother running engine. I've had it running here since about 1983, and it's never missed a beat. It's always started real well and just keeps on running. This is a corn sheller. It takes the corn kernels off the cob. Either use it for animal feed or else for seed corn. Before the days of hybrid, farmers would keep their best cobs and shell them off and replant them in the spring. And it would supposedly grow back as good a cob as it came off of. This is a burr mill used for grinding feed for animals, probably chickens or hogs. Just 2 metal burrs that run close together, and as the corn comes out, it gets cracked. The pump there is pumping water just out of the bucket. It basically recirculates just as a demonstration. The pump jack is period of the engine, probably about 1910. That was a tough one to find. That was the last piece I found. A lot of kids think it's kind of neat and ask if the bucket's going to run over or why it doesn't. I like to have my engines doing something rather than just sitting and idling. A lot of the younger people don't have a concept of what they even are or why they were. This was before the days of electricity, so it sure helped farmers and rural people with their everyday chores.
When the craftsmen at International built these tractors, they probably never imagined they would be used not for farming, but for dancing. The 1998 IH Expo brought a record number of people to Rolog. The warm summer weather and the sunny blue skies made a beautiful backdrop for folks to come and remember the days gone by, to appreciate the history that makes up today's modern farming industry. For many, IH was the only kind of tractor they had on the farm.
When I farmed, when the dad farmed, we had basically all IH equipment. And we had a local dealer in Hitterdal, we had one in Lake Park, we had one in Audubon at one time, even Westbury, north of Detroit Lakes had a dealer, Detroit Lakes had a dealer. Every little town had a dealer. And so there isn't a farm in this part of the country that hasn't had an IH tractor work on it.
And you didn't even have to be a farmer to appreciate the technology and equipment developed by International Harvester. The company built so many different products.
International has built, you just about can say you name it, and they have built it. They have started out with the tractors and other farm equipment. We have a 1850 Reaper on the grounds. That is one of the very, very first. That's the first year that McCormick ever really produced reapers and put them for sale in any volume. We have other later reapers. We have binders, we have thresh machines. We have other farm equipment, combines, and you name it. We also have refrigeration units. We have milking units here, cream separators, even window air conditioner, which is very rare. We have a lot of refrigerators and freezers. As far as I'm concerned, I think we have it pretty well covered.
Harvester had a great refrigerator. They just didn't break down. I mean, you can go find people now that bought a refrigerator in 1949 and they're still running. I mean, I got some at home, they just won't quit.
I think somewhere along the line, everybody had something to do with IH, whether Grandpa had an H or Grandma had a deep freeze or a fridge, or they started out, they had a gas engine that ran the milk house or the washing machine or something in the shop, the line shaft. IH was into so many things, and that is an association with everybody.
For the men and women that worked organizing and planning for this weekend, it was truly a dream come true.
We're going to be close to 100,000 people through this expo, and having, if 10 of them come up and tell you did a good job, it's very well worth it.
The goal of the Western Minnesota Steam Threshers reunion each year is to showcase farming history for all to enjoy, to teach the young, to bring memories back to life. It's a step back to a simple time when life was hard, but the rewards were great. Steamer Hill is a place to appreciate the technology that changed farming forever and to appreciate the great people that work so hard to make this country great. Steamer Hill, where the sun always shines in your heart.